we're going to do this morning is thickness some sides. The luthiers that thickness their sides by hand, they usually have one arm a little slightly more developed than the other from all the hand plated. We're going to use what's known as the safety planer. It's a tool that goes in the drill press. We'll talk about that when we set it up here in a minute. But it takes a good 0.5 millimeter to 1 millimeter off in a single pass, very quickly, gets it down closer to specs, and then I go to my sander and just clean up and then finish it off and get it to where it needs to be. All right, so here we are at the drill press. The first question I get is, what size drill press do you need? What I like to do is take a piece of sandpaper. This is brown 120 grit, and that's important for the bass response on your instrument. I'm kidding. Some people believe that stuff.
I go with a higher grit.
Now, when we go over to the thickness sander, we're going to put it through there, and then you're going to take the side and you're going to flex it, and you'll feel it start to relax. You tell me when it's ready to bend. Then we'll put some numbers on it. All right, so now we're ready to go ahead and thickness, right?
Yes, sir.
No, we're not. That was a trick question. Trick question. You're going to learn a lot about trick questions. The next thing to do is put them through the sander. We're going to go do that here in just a minute. I'm also going to show you how to do it by hand with a scraper. Let me just talk a little bit about how to work efficient. I build a guitar in 6 days here with students, and I've got that down to 30 to 35 hours spread out over 6 days. And the way you do that is to work efficiently. I like to use an analogy of shoot and pull, but when you shoot pull, you're not thinking just about that shot.
Next shot.
You think about the next shot. And so if you line the shots up, you can work a little bit more efficiently. Now, here are my classes for those that don't know this. I work on the hear one, see one, do one philosophy of teaching. So she's heard about it, and now she's seeing it, and then the next step, the next side, you're going to do all by yourself. Now, I want to show you just a quick way of how I store my vacuum hose, and that's why I've got this thing kind of pointing towards the ceiling here, is I used to stack this thing in the corner against the wall and all the time flop it over, and you're tripping over the hose and stuff. Then I took some hooks and put it on the ceiling, and so what I do now is just run this hose into these hooks like this, and then come up here and place it up above my head like this. And so it's always there at hand when you need it, but you're not tripping over it. So that works pretty good. There you go. Now you want to do your other side exactly the same way. So swap them out. The one that was on top now goes on the bottom, overhangs about 1/4 inch off the side of the shooting board there. Then they put the other one right up next to it. There you go. Lean on top of it and go ahead and clean that one up for us. Then we'll hold it up to a light source and we'll see how you did. Now, the interesting thing about hand tools is that if you got veins popping out of your forehead and sweat rolling down your face, something's wrong. The hand tool should be just very, very therapeutic. Just let the inertia and the weight of the tool do the work. Don't fight it. If you're having to fight it, then either your tool, your technique needs a little bit of checking, or the tool needs to be sharpened or set up. If it's set up properly, it's just a joy to work with hand tools. Yeah. Let me jump in the driver's seat and I'll show you how I get rid of that deal out in the middle. There's 3 ways to control stiffness and looseness. And my whole building philosophy is based around those 2 terms, and we'll talk more about that tomorrow. Stiffness and looseness. The first way to control stiffness and looseness, which we may even get to today, is the thickness of the soundboard. That's going to determine how stiff or how loose it is. The second one is the bracing. By the way, I have all my students cancel their gym memberships before they get here because they're not going to need it while they're here. So I put a 15-foot radius on the back and a 30-foot on the top. That's one of the things you can use, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in the voicing section, is how tight that dome is on the top is going to determine how stiff or how loose that top is. Tighter the radius, you need more energy to drive it, and you're going to get more treble. The smaller the radius, less energy to drive it, and you're probably going to get more bass. One of the problems with the steel string guitars is you get a lot of treble because you no bass. So I've chosen a 30-foot radius. That's what I use. Here's our veneers. Maple goes on there. Ebony goes on there. You want to make sure you have those overhanging enough here so you can come on and cut this perpendicular to this portion here. And we have our 3 blocks here for our stacked heel. Now, trying to glue 3 blocks to this all at once is a little more difficult than one might think because they like to try and kind of skate around here on you. So what I do is I glue these 3 blocks together. While they're getting their attitude adjusted, glue the veneers on here, clamp those, and then come back, and this has tacked up enough you're gluing 1 block to 1 block. So I've put a 2x4 on my bench vise here, and I just hang the guitar on it. We've got clearly marked where we need to be. I come in with a clamping call. I find that if I put a piece of sandpaper on it, it keeps it from skating around. And I just put that right up on the line there. Now when you do this, I'm just using a Dozuki saw, cuts on the pole stroke. Your hand needs to be like a little piston. Straight out, straight back. None of this stuff, right? All right, let me show you how to do the first side. Here we go. Come in like so, right up against your fence. You can go ahead and cut into your block. In fact, you'll see the sawdust change color when you get into the mahogany. If your sides flop open, you went too far. Okay. You don't want to do that. There you go. All right, my side's done. That's your turn. When we last left this thing, we had thicknessed it. We did our flop test. We cut it to shape, cut out our sound hole. So we're ready to begin throwing braces at this thing. What we're going to do is talk about each of the braces. I want to talk about what they do, why we even have them in there. I want to talk about size and shape and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to be using a typical Martin type bracing pattern, X brace. And we're going to do a few things a little different than what I normally do, or what I used to do. Now it's become normal to do this little different thing, and we'll talk about that. Let me get some calipers first of all, and we'll talk about size and shape. After we position those, then I'll show you how to scalp the edges. And that's just back to that idea of shoot and pull. If we can save ourselves a little time here before we glue them on, 5 or 10 minutes over the course of a week is half a day. Now, if you ever forget to do this and close your box and then cannot access your truss rod, you want to see a grown man cry, that's a good way to do it because it's a little harder to get in there and fix it at that point. Now, anytime you remove your guitar from your work surface, make sure you clean the work surface, because if you get any little goobers in there, you're going to have a surprise when it comes time to do your finish work. Happened to a friend of mine once. I'll give you a B- on that one. How about that one?
I want an A on the next one.
All right, keep it up. You got 4 more to go. If you start way back here, you're going to wind up taking it back even farther. So start up in there close, and then each one take a little chop a little farther back. Get up in there closer. Get up in there closer.
Get closer.
Yeah, there you go. And you stand straight up on that chisel and drive him down. There you go. Now the next one's going to be a little farther back.
Oh, I see. That works.
There you go. There's a method to the madness. It's a very light top. Boy, this is going to be an amazing guitar. Let's listen. I think it's going to make a great guitar. It's not quite as loose as this guy, but the most important part of the voicing aspect of it, and a lot of guys forget to do this. If you forget to do this, you're guaranteed your guitar's not going to sound good. That is sign your name on the top. So make sure you sign your names, folks. Make it official, and that's what guarantees a good guitar. Jose Romanitos taught me in Spain a number of years ago that you never know what you're going to get until the strings go on. So I've built hundreds and hundreds of guitars with students. I've got it dialed in pretty close. It's going to be a good guitar. I just don't know how good until the strings go on. So if you like, and we're going to put our strings on, what's today? Tuesday. We're going to put our strings on Saturday morning. If we like the result, you have to remember this at this point and reproduce that sound for future guitars. Mm-hmm. So it's very important because all things are going to change. Once we set this on the rims here in a few minutes, that sound is going to change. It's gone forever. It's now a guitar. So keep this sound in your head for Saturday.
Okay, we'll do.
Let's do it. So we are the beginning stages of closing the box. What we're going to do is fit the top to the rims. Then we're going to pull the back, which is gluing over there. We're going to pull it out of the go bar deck. We're going to shape those braces just a little bit because they're nice and flat on top right now. Then we're going to fit that to the rims. In the class here, I like to close the box, top and back at the same time. Save us 1.5 hours to 2 hours. In my original video, I think I did the back, got in, cleaned it out, and did the top. Now, the reason why we cut our top flush here is because now I can just put it flush with the sides here, and I know exactly where I need to be this way. You're going to match it there with your center line. Yeah. At that point, though, what I would do is I would come in and take material off of here rather than off of here, because if you get that too low, then your binding's not going to cover it, right?
Right.
Now, the most convenient place to hold this is right in front of the chisel, but obviously you don't want to do that. I even like to put a little thumb on there so it's offering a little bit of resistance and hide my fingers behind the brace there and just kind of slice into it. I'm doing more of this and less of this because I've seen people crack the back by trying to pry it out like that. There's a few different ways to cut binding channels. One is the router is stationary and the guitar spins. The other is the router, or the guitar is stationary and the router comes out on a big arm and goes around. There's also another way. So when I selected my test pieces, I got a small piece of the purfling, a small piece of the binding, and then I grabbed a piece of MDF and I ran the router across it. I'm going to cut the small channel first. In other words, the depth of the purfling and the width of the binding and the purfling. So it should be flush here or very close to it, and it should be flush here or a skosh proud. Run your finger on there. Tell me if you feel anything. Does that feel like that's nice and uniform?
Not quite.
It's very close though.
Close.
But if you don't scrape that completely flush, you've got this little hump there. And as your binding comes around there, well, guess what? You just put that into your channel. And anytime you put a black, white, black or some type of strip in there, guess what? It's going to tell on you. It's going to show that little hump. Let's talk about this end just a little bit. A couple things that can go wrong up here. One is your joints separated just enough that that bearing will roll into it and leave you a little half moon right there. So before we get out the glue bottle, we want to make sure everything's going to fit. And there's several ways to install bindings. One method is the CA glue method. Back to the hear one, see one, do one philosophy. You're going to run the tape for me while I install binding and purfling on this side.
Okay.
I'm going to get out of the driver's seat. You're going to get in the driver's seat. I'll run the tape for you. You do this side and the back.
Okay. Deal.
Come in here like so. Cut it diagonally. And then come in there and cut right up close to that line as square as possible. And it mashes, it doesn't cut. Come in with a block of wood. Come in with your chisel. Now, if you wanted to do a miter joint, you would come in and just see the mirror on the chisel there? And it shows you, there's your 90-degree angle. We're going to do a butt joint rather than a miter joint. So see your line running right through the mirror in your chisel?
Right.
It should be going straight through there, no detour left or right. Straight up and down,
Okay.
this way, right? And then just let her rip. There you go. Now, put it into the position there. What do you think?
It's going to feel a little long.
It's a little bit long. Now, here's a little secret. I like it to be about a 64th long.
Okay.
So when you put it in here, see the gap there? As you pull it up, it drives the joint shut.
Okay.
However, that's too much of a gap. I can't pull that out.
Okay.
We're going to set a neck, and there's a bunch of prep work before you set the neck. I give several analogies as I build. You know, you've been here for a couple of days, so you know that. One of the analogies I give is that building a guitar is like building a house. If the basement is square and plumb, as you build up, the roof fits. If the basement is not square and plumb, as you build up, you're compounding your problem and nothing fits. So here is the basement. This area needs to be flat. This area needs to be flat. And that's one of the reasons why we glued those braces up on the flat side of the radius dish today. The reason we were able to do that so cleanly is because this was flat. I can't stress that enough. This is the foundation. Let's turn it around the other side, take a look. And once again, very, very nice fit. And when we carve that, that's going to be beautiful. If you notice the fiber starting to pull up, stop and come in the other direction. I've found that if you catch it in time before you rip that fiber completely out of there, if you put a little hide glue or fish glue on it and glue it back down, it completely disappears. Well, folks, here we are back on day 3. When we left yesterday, we just glued the fretboard on, did a heel cap, and now we're ready to start scraping bindings. Our plan of attack for today is we're going to scrape our bindings flush on the back and the top of the back and the sides. Then we're going to carve the neck, come in a level radius of fretboard, do our inlay on the fretboard, pound our frets in, do our fretwork all before lunch. Lunch is at 3. I'm kidding, no. Lunch is at noon again. And then the afternoon, we're into finish work. So I'm going to give you some sandpaper, turn you loose, leave you to your misery. I've divided it down into steps. Step number 1 is to carve this area. Step number 2 is to carve it flush with the side of the fretboard and transition. And step number 3 is thickness and roundness. Each step has a few steps. Step 1 of step 1 is carve it flush with the heel. One of the most intimidating steps in the guitar building process for a lot of people is carving the neck. But the way I break it down into these steps like this, most students, when they get done, they say, shoot, that's all there is to it. I can do that. It's not a big deal. Okay, what I do here is I come in with my coarse dragon tail rasp. I take half of the neck, my half, this is your half, right? Don't screw it up. And I divide it into thirds. Lower third, middle third, and then the upper third. I start with the coarse rasp, the rounded side, and just come in here and work this area here in that lower third until I make that transition. So I place the hand plane on there, tip it ever so slightly, and I've got this hand plane set up to just take a very small bite. And just run it down there like so. And the first question that people usually have is, how the heck is he doing that without blowing out all the ebony?
That was the first question I was going to ask.
I read your mind. But see how easy that goes in? If you did all of your foundation properly, your roof, which is your fret wire, should fit. It should just go right in. And I see everything going right in. It's seating properly. After lunch on day 3, we're basically done building. And we have arrived at this. The guitar is done being built except for the bridge, which we're going to make tomorrow. I'm going to show you 2 types of pore filling methods. One is going to be shellac and sawdust on the neck. The other one's going to be epoxy on the back and sides. So one of the reasons I don't fill all these things before I start sanding is because I'm starting with 80 and 120 grit. And I run the risk of just going right through my patch or my fill job there. So I usually sand up to about 180 or so, and then come in and do the filling. So that's how you would fill a little small void like that. So to French polish, or to French polish, if you will, we need to start by getting something on there. Now, I had a student that used to say that French polishing is like icing a cake. You put the icing on, you move it around. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that, and people make it extremely complicated. It's just very simple. You're throwing icing on the cake and moving it around.
Okay.
Now, to get the icing on the cake, we need some type of utensil. We're going to use what's known as a muñeca. Look at that, huh? We've been out this, what, about an hour and a half now? If that.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's looking really nice.
Yep.
Here we go. You want to work fairly quickly. Put myself a little bit right there. Come in, just get a little bit on the card. Back into it. Go down. See, now I'm not fully loaded, so I feel fairly confident about running around that lower edge there. Charge it up again, start at the top because I'm fully loaded, and then go down to the lower edge so you don't have enough build on there to roll around. Now, the secret to polishing a guitar in 6 to 8 hours, which is about how much time we're going to have in this complete guitar, 6 to 8 hours, is that we have 2 people working on it. And so that cuts our time in half. If you're doing this by yourself, just double those times. But still, if you think about it, you know, if it takes you 8 hours with 2 of us, 16 hours to do a whole guitar, that's still pretty good. All right, welcome back to day 6, the final day of the class. And the final day, we've still got a bunch of work to do before we can play it. We've got to make a nut, we've got to make a saddle, we've got to drill the bridge pin holes, ream them out, fit everything, finally get the strings on, and then it's still not playable. Then we have to do a setup. And the setup is almost as important as it, or probably is just as important as building the instrument, because you can get it to this point and make it completely unplayable. So we got to put it through a setup.
It's not as intimidating. Don't let it intimidate you.
Right.
If I can do it, anybody can do it.
There you go.
Because it's the way Robbie teaches too. It's he's going to tell you how it's done, then he's going to demonstrate it, and then you're going to do it. And it's such a great method for teaching, and it's like you make it so easy to follow you with what you're doing.
Now, do you think that when you get home, he's in the process of setting up his own shop, buying tools and that kind of stuff. You think you could redo this? You could do it again?
With the videos.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just been an amazing week. It's been an amazing experience, and it's very therapeutic.
I need to start charging therapy prices.
It's very nice.
Well, thanks again, and I know you're going to enjoy that guitar.
Thank you. Appreciate it.